This is Rashad, and you're watching Baltimore Basics. Um, when I think of Baltimore culture, I first want to say like how proud I am of it, how unique we are as a city, how we are unintuitively or unconsciously trendsetters, right? The fact that we have our own style, our own slang, our own verbiage, our own way of engaging and building relationships, our own way of being street smart, board smart, and all how it encompasses all of us. And I think I was introduced, like most people, through Baltimore culture, just family, right? My family was my role models. My family was my first introduction to Baltimore culture. From the way I interact with people, the way I move freely across the communities, the way I'm able to work across intergenerations, the way I have a love and an ear for music, the way I have an understanding for cultural relevant and valuable things such as dirt bike riding, my understanding and love for sports, my understanding for arts all come from certain people and my upbringing and my family. And the unique thing about that is a lot of those different fields, from arts to dirt bike riding to sports to music, those in my family were, I want to say, the leaders in each of those fields. So I was introduced to a lot of that early age, right? So by the time I became a young adult, a lot of these things I knew of the history, I knew of the background of it, I knew the originators, I knew how it started, just by observation. And then once it got time for me to actually engage in these activities or these certain aspects of culture, I understood and I had a bigger appreciation for it. So I never allow anyone to shift that narrative to say that Baltimore didn't start this, Baltimore didn't lead that, because I know for fact and reality that we are much leaders in the world when it comes to culture, especially for African American or Black and Brown people. I like to speak on that a lot, actually, and I've been speaking on it a lot recently as well. I'm the type of person that I believe in knowing your story and protecting the narrative, and I feel that same way about the city that I was born and raised in, and I love and appreciate. To be honest, what I said in like other spaces when I have these platforms to speak is I can care less about anyone else's perception, anyone else's bias or narrative, or how they perceive us as Baltimore or Baltimoreans, right? Like, your perception ain't my reality, so I ain't even gonna waste time in trying to grasp on whatever you paint, right? This life that I live, the life that my peers live, the life and the culture of the community is what I was brought up in, so I appreciate it and I understand it. Baltimore is not a perfect city, but Baltimore is a beautiful city. Baltimore has a culture of tales of two cities, right? In one, we understand that the analogy of the white owl and the black butterfly, right? And we understand that your zip code can determine certain outcomes and trajectories of your life, right? But we also understand the uniqueness of how Baltimore can identify who you are, your stance based off of your geographical location. Are you from East or West Baltimore? Are you from Northeast or Northwest? Are you from South Baltimore, right? All of these have their own unique culture based off of its geographical location, and we take pride in that. Baltimore is a city based off of its blue collar history we're very prideful in our high schools, right? So when someone asks you what school you go to, we're not talking about college, right? And if someone was to answer with the college that they graduated from, that's the first flag. Be like, no, you're not from Baltimore. You didn't take pride in saying where you first started, where you found yourself and your identity. And most of those times is because of the blue collar history, that exposure and understanding yourself you come to grow into it by the time you're in your high school years, right? Us being a plant and industry based city and a port city, blue collar jobs was the way of breaking the cycle or breaking the barrier and getting some sustainability with your family. Not till recently are we starting to be a city that's very pushing forward towards college education and further education. So you're starting to see the shift there, but we're still prideful in the things. We're still prideful in our grassroots as a people, our communities, our neighborhoods, things of that sort. We're prideful of things that make us unique. We're prideful in the fact that I know by the time I got to college, I didn't know I had a slang. I didn't know people would consider my vernacular or how I enunciate certain words to be country, right? And I went to college in Baltimore, right? But it took other people from outside of the city, from New York and DC, to be like, yo, you country, you where you from? You Alabama, stuff like that, right? And it made me understand, like, wow, we do have this unique culture that makes us a northern city with a southern dialect. So when I think of like Baltimore and people perceiving and always want to carry this narrative of us being violent, us being very oppositional, I think that's our way of protecting ourselves, right? We are a city of grit. We ain't a city of griminess. We are a city of grit. We persevered through all of its upheavals, and that's what makes us so creative. That's what makes us unique, because regardless of it, much isn't given to us, but we go and rack it up and we earn it and we secure it. So we're very protective in our nature. And the beautiful thing about me now that I'm able to travel the world, I feel safe wherever I go, right? Because Baltimore is that standard of me understanding how to move, how to read people, how to appreciate cultures, how to know what to look for, know what to avoid. Because if I survived here in 28 years, I feel as though I can go anywhere. So that's what makes Baltimore beautiful to me. I can care less about the powers that be, the media, and everyone else that want to paint this city to be what they believe it is. It's not The Wire all the time, right? We got pockets in the community that are that, but Baltimore is a city of neighborhoods that got hidden gems. And the unfortunate thing about it is once we break this cycle of living, dying within our 4-block radius, and you start to see other parts of the city, it opens you up to wanting to see the rest of the world. And that's what we got to start to do as a city. We got to take pride in our city, and we can't be reactionary every time somebody wants to put a label on us. If we proactive and we protect the narrative and the richness of Baltimore, then Baltimore creates its own report card. Baltimore creates its own brand. Baltimore don't have to be reactionary to the president and his comments of being whatever he want to be or things of that sort. Like, I'm not losing sleep over him because I'm doing the work in Baltimore that's making it beautiful. I'm doing the work in Baltimore that's raising the next young leaders. We're so ahead of everyone else, right? I travel now. Baltimore is so progressive as a city, right? In politics and how we are changing policy, we're very progressive. And understanding, I remember I went to Mississippi, right? And we was talking Baltimore, the buzzword up here is like we talk about and we advocate for equity. Equity is not even discussed as you get further and further down in Mississippi. They looking at me like, what is this word? Right? They're still stuck on equality. We're past equality. We're advocating and we're enforcing equity, equitable policies and best practices. What was another one? I talked to a very powerful leader, elected official in, where was I at? In Cleveland. And they didn't even know about asset and strength-based practices around engaging youth in positive outcomes. And this is something that we talk about all the time in Baltimore. Working on the political campaigns and government structures. Baltimore, we're progressive in the fact that we have black leaderships in all of our public offices. And people always say if Baltimore can get it right, everyone else can get it right. Detroit can get it right. Oakland can get it right. Why haven't Baltimore gotten it right yet?